What if events went differently and Tom Riddle succeeded in murdering Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets? Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to another captivating what-if scenario. Today we're diving into a dark and chilling alternate timeline in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Imagine a universe where the young Tom Riddle, through his memory preserved in the diary, triumphs in the Chamber of Secrets and eliminates Harry Potter earlier within the timeline. How would this early victory for Voldemort reshape the future of the magical world? And with the snakes still alive and the fear of the Dark Lord's rise gripping the wizarding community, what fate awaits Hogwarts, its students, and the wider wizarding world? Let's explore an alternate universe where Voldemort's power grows unchecked and see how this alternate scenario changes the course of history. But before we dive into this thought-provoking scenario, if you guys enjoy my work on the channel, I do want to say do make sure to consider supporting my work on Patreon as well as the Substack. Your support allows me to continue to create more amazing content just like this, and we can dive deep into more what-if scenarios, part 2, part 3, part 4, whatever it is in between. I want to do it all, and I'm very, very excited. But that being said, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, let's finally dive into the wizarding world of Harry Potter, as he summits to the deadly poison of the Basilisk and perishes right then and there. So, how will Voldemort's life change now that he has been reborn in the body of a 16-year-old Tom Riddle? Location: Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the Chamber of Secrets. Time: 3:45 p.m. He had finally done it. Lying motionless on the chamber floor was the Basilisk, a giant serpent that was known for killing anyone who looked it directly in its eyes. But now its own eyes were void of life, and the one responsible for its death was standing above the Basilisk's corpse, with one of its fangs sticking from his arm. The boy tore the tooth from his flesh and placed his hand firmly over the wound in an attempt to stop the bleeding. Harry Potter, a young wizard here at Hogwarts, had defeated the beast using the sword of Godric Gryffindor, the very weapon of one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The now blood-stained sword clanged onto the floor as Harry released it from his grasp and rushed over to his fellow classmate, Ginny Weasley. The girl was at death's door, her body gradually growing colder as time went on. If Harry did not do something soon, both him and Ginny would perish. As Harry thought of his next move, another boy a few years old than himself stood before him. The older boy, a former student at Hogwarts named Tom Riddle, claimed that Ginny did not have much time left, and soon all her life force would be his. And with her life gone, Tom would be able to reclaim his own. Any other human being would call his actions cruel, but by this point, Tom no longer had any humanity for himself to be compared with others. Riddle arched a brow when he noticed Harry was still hanging on to the Basilisk's fang that he had pulled from his arm earlier. The younger boy tightened his grip around the tooth, and Tom's eyes darted to his diary, which was lying beside Ginny. It was the tool he used to control the girl, and it could very well lead to his downfall if Harry succeeded in destroying it. But Tom laughed at the pathetic display of Harry attempting to lift the fang from the ground and not being able to move it an inch. The poison was taking its toll on the boy. A wave of paralysis hit Harry all at once, causing him to fall to his side, unable to keep himself upright. In his mind, the boy was screaming at himself to get up. If not for himself, then for poor Ginny. But he simply could not. The numbness had already settled throughout Harry's entire body. As he laid on his side, Harry could only watch Ginny, sudden gasp leaving her lips before her form went completely limp again. But this time, there was no slow breathing or even a pulse to indicate the girl was alive. There was nothing. That gasp was literally Ginny's last breath. The moment he realized that the girl has passed away, tears began to stream down Harry's face. Or at least he believed there were tears, as he could not feel much of anything right now. But there was no way he would not shed a tear for his deceased friend, right? This numbing feeling within Harry's body was making it hard to register what exactly was happening around him. Tom soon blocked Harry's view of Ginny, and he claimed the girl passed away peacefully. There was no suffering. Ginny simply died in her sleep. A mercy, Tom said. Riddle looked down at his hands and clenched them into fists, smiling at the feeling of the muscles bending within his fingers. He knelt down and slowly placed his hand on the floor and relished in the feeling of the cold stone against his flesh. These were sensations Tom had not felt in a long time, and the older boy did not realize how much he missed being able to physically touch something until now. Tom finally had his body back. Glancing down at his fallen enemy, Riddle could see Harry's eyes were still wide open, but they were just as lifeless as the Basilisk's own. Or Ginny's. Harry had joined them in death. At least one of them, that is. Tom raised his hand to the Basilisk and began to speak in Parseltongue, the language of snakes Tom used to command the slithery creatures to do his bidding. Harry had even gained the ability to speak to snakes through Voldemort. But now that the boy was gone, Tom was one of the few wizards left who actually knew Parseltongue and could speak it fluently. As he spoke, the Basilisk's body soon started to twitch. A blue aura glowed around Riddle's hand. The boy was using a bit of his energy that he had stolen from Ginny to heal the beast's wound. Harry certainly did a number on the serpent, but it was nothing Tom could not fix with some magic. The wound within the Basilisk's mouth was now closed, and its eyes shot open, the slitted pupils narrowing due to light suddenly being directed into them. The Basilisk rose from the ground and looked down on its master, awaiting its next command. But Tom only glared at the creature and warned it that if it failed him again, the boy would not resurrect it a second time. The Basilisk gave Riddle a small nod, understanding its master's threat. It would not fail again. Location: Hogwarts. Tunnels. Time: 3:50 p.m. Trapped within the cavernous tunnels underneath the school, Ron Weasley tried with all his might to push aside the rubble that had blocked their path. His companion, an amnesiac Gilderoy Lockhart, was the one responsible for their current predicament. Discovering the author was a fraud and had claimed other wizards' accomplishments as his own, Harry and Ron forced Lockhart to travel with them into the Chamber of Secrets. But after pretending to collapse, Lockhart managed to steal Ron's wand, unaware that the weapon was defective. The man casted a spell to erase the memories of the two boys, but it backfired, and the impact caused the cavern to break down upon the trio. Now Harry was off doing God knows what, and Ron was stuck babysitting. But suddenly, Ron heard a voice coming from the other side of the debris. He automatically assumed it was Harry because, well, who else could it be? Ron prayed Harry had brought along his sister Ginny, alive and well, and he happily called out to his friend. The person on the other side did answer Ron, but the Weasley boy thought Harry's voice sounded odd. Maybe it was because of the rubble or the echo in the cavern. Without warning, something busted through the debris, and dust filled the area, causing Ron and Lockhart to have a coughing fit. Ron scolded Harry for not giving him a heads up, but as the dust cleared, the boy realized the person who had come through was not Harry, and he was not alone. Scrambling away, Ron stared wide-eyed at the giant beast before him, barely focusing on the older boy beside it. Well, not until the boy mentioned Harry's name, and that instantly caught Ron's attention. The Weasley asked who the older boy was and what did he know about Harry. The mysterious boy did introduce himself as Tom, and he gave Ron an honest answer about his friend's whereabouts, although it was not the answer the Weasley wanted to hear. Tom simply stated that Harry was too weak to fight against the Basilisk's poison, and Ginny, poor, sweet Ginny. The girl's foolishness had led to her own downfall, but what should Tom had expected from a pathetic Weasley? And once Ron was out of the way, the same could be said about him. And what to swallow? After all, if the boy had not followed Harry into these tunnels, he would have had a chance of escaping Riddle's incoming slaughter. Ron began shouting at Tom, accusing the older boy of lying about Harry and Ginny. They had to be alive. They just had to be. Ron grabbed Tom by the collar of his robes and shook the boy furiously with tears in his eyes. Riddle just let the younger boy do as he pleased, amused by the display. The Basilisk, on the other hand, was now focused on Lockhart, who looked up at the creature in childish awe and curiosity. The man happily greeted the giant creature and he reached out to pet it on its head. But unfortunately, Lockhart made direct contact with the beast's eyes, and not even a second had passed before the man collapsed to the ground. It was not a trick this time. Ron immediately turned away from Tom and let the older boy go to aid Lockhart. But while the man's eyes were still open, there was no pulse. He had passed away before even hitting the ground. Such was the power of the Basilisk's gaze. Remembering what he and Harry had learned from Hermione's research on the creature, Ron shut his eyes tight to keep from accidentally looking into the Basilisk's own. But the beast had other ways of eliminating its prey, and Ron's breathing quickened when he felt the serpent coiling around him. With a broken wand and Harry nowhere around, Ron knew there was nothing he could do to defend himself against the Basilisk. So, with one strong squeeze, the Basilisk crushed its captive, the sound of bones cracking echoing throughout the cavern. Location: Hogwarts. Hospital wing. Time: 4:01 p.m. Waking up with a start, Hermione Granger sat up in her hospital bed and took in a few deep breaths. Once her breathing was even, the girl's eyes darted around the hospital wing, relieved that her surroundings were at least familiar. But what happened? Why was Hermione here? And how long was she out for? Just as her mind raced with questions, Madame Pomfrey entered the room and rushed to Hermione's side, ecstatic about the girl finally awakening. The nurse could see the confused expression on her patient's face, and she quickly explained how Hermione had been in a petrified state for some time. Hermione frowned, but the memories of recent events gradually returned to her. How she had been searching for the beast, known as the Basilisk, on her own, and used a small mirror as protection. As long as she did not make direct eye contact with the serpent, Hermione would be able to live for another day. Even if she would be petrified instead. But because Hermione was up now, that had to mean that the Basilisk had been defeated. Harry and Ron did it. The girl moved to get out of her bed, but Nurse Pomfrey protested and insisted her young patient rest for a little while longer. But how could Hermione rest without knowing how her friends were doing right now? What if they were injured? Or worse? Nurse Pomfrey calmed the girl down and said she would personally bring Harry and Ron to the hospital wing herself. The old woman would ask Professor McGonagall of the boys' whereabouts, and she headed out of the wing to do just that. While she waited, Hermione lied back down on her bed and stared up at the ceiling with a small smile on her face. She was alive, and Harry and Ron were all right. She just knew it. But a sudden scream pulled Hermione from her happy thoughts. The girl again sat up straight and looked to the hospital wing's entrance. She knew the scream belonged to Pumphrey, but happened to the old woman? As if on cue, a huge shadow slowly emerged on the wall outside the wing's entrance. Hermione's mouth opened in a silent gasp, and she quickly scrambled beneath her bed to hide. The moment she was out of sight, something entered the wing. Something big. Something hideous. It slithered its way inside, and Hermione held a hand to her mouth to keep from making a sound. But it became harder for the girl to hold in her screams as the creature drew closer to her bed. It stopped in front of where Hermione was hiding, and the girl prayed that it would not look under the bed. It felt like an eternity. But the beast soon left Hermione alone and headed further into the hospital wing. Hermione was relieved the creature had not noticed her, but the girl's relief was short-lived, as a pair of hands grabbed onto her ankles from behind and dragged a screaming Hermione out of her hiding spot. Hermione was prepared to fight against whoever had dared to touch her, but as she was flipped onto her back, a hand wrapped around her throat. The girl could feel her esophagus closing gradually, and it was becoming difficult to get air into her lungs with each passing second. Hermione slapped her attacker's arm and kicked as hard as she could, but it was futile, and her attacker told her as much. The older boy looked down at his captive and shook his head. He called Hermione a filthy mudblood, unworthy of wielding magic. The offensive term brought forth memories of Draco Malfoy, a student who belonged to the Slytherin house. Malfoy had called Hermione a mudblood as well, because she was born to a Muggle family, and therefore some wizards, such as most of the students in Slytherin, believed those born as Muggles should not be allowed to control magic. And with his green and black robes, Hermione assumed the older boy belonged to the Slytherin house like Malfoy. But the girl was not familiar with this student. Could it be because he was in a higher grade? Hermione had so many questions about her attacker's identity, but they were pushed aside as the girl caught sight of something above her. Staring Hermione down was the creature from before. A creature Hermione was now sure is the Basilisk. But how was that possible? If Hermione was freed of the petrification curse, then the Basilisk had to be dead. Are there more than one roaming the halls of Hogwarts? Her questions would never be answered, Hermione quickly realized, and she could only scream as she was forced to look into the eyes of the beast above her. No mirror, no reflection. There was nothing around that could have saved Hermione from the Basilisk's killing gaze. Her fate was sealed. Location, Hogwarts. Albus Dumbledore's office. Time 4:23 p.m. That was one mudblood down. It was about time for Tom to get rid of the rest of the filth. But before he did so, Riddle wanted to pay an old friend a visit. Tom commanded the Basilisk to go back into hiding for the moment. This was something the boy wanted to handle on his own. The Basilisk obeyed and headed to one of the nearby hidden entrances to the underground tunnels. The way the serpent has been able to roam Hogwarts for so long without being seen was both incredible and terrifying. From his robes, Tom pulled out his wand, which was made from yew wood, and the core was that of a phoenix feather. Specifically a feather from the phoenix fox, who belonged to the headmaster of Hogwarts. And speaking of the school's headmaster, Tom threw open the doors to the main office and took a moment to look around. It has been such a long time since the boy had set foot in this office, and it does not seem to have changed much over the years. The big wooden desk sitting in the center of the room, the two staircases in the back, the large collection of books both old and new. Yes, nothing has changed. Tom ignored the nostalgia he felt from the office, and instead called out to seemingly no one. He demanded that he come out now and face Riddle, to no longer be a coward. At that, Tom suddenly heard something shaking, and he looked up to see a random book trying desperately to pull itself from the mass of literature it had been sitting within. Once it was free, the book flew across the room towards Tom, who ducked to avoid being hit by the object and settled on the floor behind the boy. The book then started to transform, with the front and back covers turning into 2 arms, while the pages within extended into 2 legs. The rest of the pages transformed into the body, and then finally, a head was made. Now standing before Tom was an old man with long white hair, and he towered over the boy with his incredible height. The man ran a hand through his long beard and examined Tom with sadness in his eyes. Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, and one of the most powerful beings in the wizarding world, had recently been suspended due to the actions of Lucius Malfoy. The spiteful man had forced the rest of the Hogwarts Board of Governors to temporarily move Dumbledore from his position after a few of the students are attacked by the Basilisk. Dumbledore was not even supposed to be in the school, and yet here he was, hiding in plain sight using a transfiguration spell. Dumbledore stepped closer to Tom and asked the boy about Harry, although he had a pretty good guess of what became of the boy who lived. Tom confirmed the old man's suspicions and commented on how foolish it was for Dumbledore to send a boy to do a man's job. Dumbledore bowed his head, saddened by the death of Harry Potter. The boy had so much to live for, and if he was being honest with himself, Dumbledore was mostly to blame for his students' passing. He could have saved Harry, but Dumbledore put too much faith in the young boy, especially after what happened with the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry was the chosen one, so how did everything go so wrong? But Dumbledore bowed to avenge his fallen student, as well as those who had suffered due to Tom's actions. Wasting no more time, the old man brought out his wand and aimed it at Tom. The boy followed suit and laughed at his former teacher. Riddle was sure Dumbledore would not have the guts to kill a child, let alone his favorite student, which was Tom's self-proclaimed title back in the day. But Dumbledore would not be fooled by Tom's young appearance. Riddle was no child, not anymore. He was a man who had allowed himself to be consumed by darkness, and he needed to be stopped, here and now. Just then, the entrance doors swung open once more, and a distressed Minerva McGonagall came waltzing into the office, unaware of the confrontation taking place. The old woman had taken up the position of headmistress after Albus was suspended, and with the recent disappearance of Ginny Weasley, McGonagall was seriously thinking about what to do next. If the Basilisk was not dealt with soon, then she will have no choice but to close down the school. For the sake of the children, of course. Walking into the office, McGonagall froze in her tracks when she saw Albus, and a young boy the headmistress did not recognize. She opened her mouth, preparing to bombard Dumbledore with plenty of questions. With a smirk, Tom suddenly spun around and fired a stream of magic at McGonagall. The woman quickly transformed into her cat form to dodge the attack, and she sprinted to Dumbledore's side. Dumbledore then ordered the cat to evacuate Hogwarts immediately. With the Basilisk and Tom Riddle at large, no one was safe. Minerva gave the headmaster a small nod and rushed towards one of the back doors of Dumbledore's office, just as Tom shot another blast of magic her way. But this time, Albus blocked Tom's magic using his wand and countered with a blast of his own magic. Riddle rolled out of the way of the incoming attack, and Dumbledore's magic instead hit the entrance doors, knocking them off their hinges. The two wizards then started trading blows, circling one another as magical bursts shot across the room, one after the other. But soon enough, Tom managed to strike Dumbledore in his shoulder, and the old man winced in pain. While the boy should have been happy that he landed a blow, Riddle was instead quite upset. He demanded that Dumbledore stop holding back. If they were going to duel, they would give each other everything they have. No exceptions. Dumbledore was about to oblige when commotion outside caught both of the wizards' attention. Tom figured that someone must have already found the bodies of Pumphrey and Hermione. He thought he had more time to do as he pleased before going about his mission, but now it seemed he would have to make his escape earlier than expected. Dumbledore was a powerful wizard on his own, so having other wizards aiding him while Tom was stuck in the body of his 16-year-old self, which was noticeably weaker than his adult form, would be disastrous. But once he was back at full strength, Tom will have his final duel with Dumbledore, and he will be victorious. Putting a hand over his mouth, Riddle suddenly spewed a blast of flames, and the fire took on the form of a basilisk. The serpent hissed before lunging at Dumbledore, but the old man effortlessly defeated the basilisk with a wave of his hand. The flames dispersed into thin air, but when the fire cleared, Dumbledore was horrified to see that Tom was nowhere in sight. He had escaped. And that is going to be it for part 1 of What If Tom Riddle Succeeded in Murdering Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets. Now, would you guys like to see a part 2? Now that Harry Potter has been eliminated, we're seeing so many changes already happening so very fast, and there's such little time with some of these scenarios, and I feel like I want to really do more, and I'm just very excited to have finally given you I've really tried hard to do this Harry Potter what if scenario for you guys. It's my first Harry Potter what if, and I do consider, like, I really want to consider going into the wizarding world even more, like going in depth with so many different scenarios. So again, if you guys enjoy these types of videos, I would highly recommend that you guys subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you guys are all up to date when I do another video. But that being said, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below, and I hope to hear from you soon. But that being said, take care and have a fantastic day. Peace out.